Good morning. Good morning, everybody. It's great to be here today in another NATO country. My topic today is orderly energy transition opportunity. Orderly energy transition is about navigating successfully the energy trilemma. We need to address the security of supply, environmental sustainability, cost effectiveness, and economic growth to be able to gain broad societal acceptance for the energy transition. But the opportunity is huge. In the European Union, there is 1.7 trillion cumulative investment opportunity by 2030, net gain of 5 million jobs, and increased security of supply. However, we need to be successful in 3 key areas. Firstly, we need to have 3 times faster renewable energies deployment and increased demand electrification despite the headwinds. Secondly, we need to unlock 4 key bottleneck areas. Number 1, we need to create at-scale supply chains, including availability of raw materials and skilled labor, and build supporting grid infrastructure. We need to have huge investments in power transmission and distribution networks over the next 10 years, 400 billion euros of investments. In particular, in distribution electricity, distribution side, the step change in annual investment levels is great. On the gas network sides, in addition to the security of supply related investments, we need to also prepare for repurposing 70% of Europe's gas infrastructure for hydrogen blending. Second point, we need to ensure land availability for wind and solar build-out. Third point, we need to ensure regulation enables timely transaction. Regulation is a broad issue, and today we'll shortly touch upon permitting. Finally, fourth element, we need to drive technology costs down and scale, whilst ensuring sufficient upfront capex for the high cost. Finally, the orderly energy transition requires coordination. Regulators need to push for necessary regulatory reforms, incentivize local manufacturing, and promote cross-national coordination. Market operators, they need to invest in R&D, improve internal capabilities, attract and retain workforce, and partner up to improve supply chains. Now, for us to meet the Fit for 55 targets, we need to double the share of renewables by 2030. We need to have 3 to 5 times more solar, onshore, and offshore wind investments annually until 2030. We need to have also massive electrification across demand sectors. For example, 20% EVs of all the cars on the road by 2030. Current level is about 1%. We need to have also significant increase in the electrification of the heat demand. So heat pumps, residential heat pumps. What we see actually currently is also the electrification of the heat production with help of heat pumps, electric boilers actually, and even electrolyzers are being currently planned next to district heating networks due to the planned sustainable fuel production facilities. These kind of developments are currently happening in Sweden and in Finland, and the plans are real. So the first key bottleneck area that we need to unlock. Firstly, raw materials. We are likely to have a shortage and heavy reliance on China for critical raw materials on renewable energies and EVs. For example, 50 to 60% shortage of hard-to-substitute rare earth materials, such as neodymium and praseodymium. We are also likely to have a short supply by 2025 of other key materials, such as nickel and lithium. How to overcome these risks? We need to increase the recycling of raw materials together with the OEMs. We need to foster R&D for the substitution of rare earth metals in permanent magnets. Second element here is lack of supply security for critical components due to limited local manufacturing. China is dominating the supply of key components in batteries and solar panels, for example. We need to scale up our regional supply chains, and one way to do it is by having local content requirements and sustainable requirements in the tenders. We are also likely to have shortage of large vessels to support deployment of extra-large offshore turbines. About 3,000 megawatts offshore wind development is at risk by 2025 because of this. We need to send clear demand signals to marine industry with long-term target and volume commitments. Finally, there's a massive requirement of labor for renewable energy sources deployment. We need to have 3 times more skilled construction FTEs by 2030 compared to the situation we are having now. For making this happen, we need to foster international and cross-sector utilization of workers and have reskilling programs. The second important bottleneck area is land, the land availability in particular. Just to give you some numbers, in Germany, up to 80% of suitable land is needed for wind. In Italy, up to 85% of suitable land is needed for solar. So, to overcome the land-related issues, we need to develop internal capabilities and tools to access the best sites for renewable energies, and we need to allocate sufficient land for the RES deployment. One important element here is actually also supporting the repowering of existing installations by simplifying permitting processes. What I mean by that is that, for example, only 10% of the current end-of-life wind farms are being repowered with modern wind turbines. Why is that? It's because of the difficulties in the permitting. Talking about permitting, in European Union, we tend to have in many places still complex permitting processes that are decentralized and involve multiple authorities. An example from Italy is that there could be like more than 30 authorities involved in an 8-year permitting process. So we need to streamline the permitting processes. We need to strengthen the governance, for example, by establishing country-level central authorities, and so on and forth. We need to also ensure that our authorities have sufficient staff and the necessary processes are being digitalized. Obviously, there is always the not in my backyard syndrome, and we need to have an institutional approach towards that. We need to have communication campaigns because we need to make the change happen. So, the final element, we need to scale down the technology costs for enabling investments at scale. For example, hydrogen. Break-even between gray and renewable requires 65 gigawatt of electrolyzer capacity and $50 billion gap to be bridged. And we are not scaling any of the necessary technologies currently at the pace required for the 1.5 Celsius pathway. Historically, we have been moderately successful in scaling the solar costs. However, we need to go well beyond. We need to continue scaling the more mature technologies like wind and solar, but we have to have like a way faster pace in scaling the more emerging and novel technologies, such as the carbon capture, use and storage, green hydrogen, and long-duration energy storage. But the investment opportunity and the business opportunity is huge. The addressable global market is over $9,000 billion by 2030. The orderly energy transition is a great opportunity, and it's reachable for us. And I'm confident that we all can make it happen. Thank you. Valdis.